Idaho's elections are secure. We do not see non-citizens trying to vote in Idaho elections. Sometimes we hear rumors or concerns of that. That is just not the case.
And that was Secretary of State Phil McGrain testifying in the Senate State Affairs Committee last March. There's no proof non-citizens have voted in any Idaho election, nor have they tried, he said. Yet House Joint Resolution 5, which he supported, passed through committee that day, then the full Senate 6 days later, and finally submitted to Mr. McGrain's office so he could put it on the ballot for this November. HJR 5 would change Idaho's constitution, specifically Section 2, Article 6. It says he or she offers to vote for the period of time provided by law if registered as provided by law as qualified elector. It says right now, with regard to who qualifies to be an elector, every male or female citizen of the United States, 18 years old, lived in Idaho for at least 30 days, they are eligible to vote. And yes, there's a typo in our Constitution, by the way. That's not the part they're trying to change, though. HJR 5 would add the line, no person who is not a citizen of the United States shall be a qualified elector in any election held within the state of Idaho. That's on your ballot this November, HJR 5. The question asks, shall Section 2, Article 6 of the Constitution of the state of Idaho be amended to provide that individuals who are not citizens of the United States may not be qualified electors in any election held within the state of Idaho? Question mark. And you may be asking, isn't that already covered in that first sentence of the Constitution with every male or female citizen of the United States, which is exactly what was asked when HJR 5 was discussed for the first time in the House State Affairs Committee, and it was answered this way.
The word every isn't exclusive. It just says that for sure, like, this group gets to vote. It doesn't say other groups can't.
Okay, so that's Jack Tomczak with Americans for Citizen Voting. He said the answer for some states was to change the part that says every or any in their constitution to the word only. And Mr. Tomczak came all the way from Minnesota, from an organization based out of D.C. with basically offices all over the country, to point out non-citizens are voting in local elections in places like New York City, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Oakland, 11 cities in Maryland, and 3 in Vermont. In local elections, mind you, like school boards, city council, maybe for mayor, but definitely not state or federal elections, which prompted this question by Representative John Gannon.
Can you give me a specific example of someone who is not a citizen of the United States who has voted in an Idaho election?
Mr. Tomczak.
Madam Chair and Representative, no, I can't, because there are no municipalities who have tried to implement this yet.
Which is what Phil McGrain said. There's no doubt this fear of non-citizens voting has been stoked by what has been happening and highly publicized at the U.S.-Mexico border, something that was said without saying during that committee hearing in March.
It is undeniable that the foreign citizen voting movement is very real and that a constitutional fix is the only solution.
So here we are with a potential constitutional fix. HJR passed through the State House, is on the November ballot. And some of you have been getting a look at what is on your ballot with absentee ballots showing up this week. Lynn in Meridian, she wrote in to ask several questions like electors, voters, citizens. Seems HJR 5 serves no purpose because our Constitution already has these provisions. What would be the point of any changes, she asked. Does HJR 5 prohibit legal non-citizen immigrants in Idaho from voting? She points out how long it takes for a resident to gain citizenship, all while living here, paying taxes, yet they get no say in the leadership of the country where they're working. Is this ballot measure targeting our ag and service workers in Idaho, Lynn wants to know. Well, we thought we would take those questions to Boise State political scientist Dr. Stephanie Witt, who we also wanted to help us understand the big question of why.
I think a thing to keep in mind is that a non-citizen is not the same always as an undocumented immigrant, right? In other words, there are millions of immigrants living in the United States who are non-citizens, but they have documentation. They arrived here legally. In the places that have allowed non-citizens to vote, I don't think the thought here is, oh, let's have a whole bunch of illegal immigrants voting. The thought is, these are people paying into our taxes. They own property in the jurisdiction. They're likely patrons of the school district with kids in school. So should they be shut out of any say in who governs the school district? Some cities have decided, no, they shouldn't be shut out.
So our Constitution, it says every male or female citizen in the United States, 18 years old, who has resided in this state of Idaho for like 30 days, can vote.
Yes.
They want to add to that. Is it necessary? Is every male or female citizen of the United States covered?
Well, here's the thing. We already have a federal law that requires that only citizens can vote in federal elections. There are no states that allow non-citizens to vote in state elections. So I think we're covered already, but this is a chance for supporters of the amendment to say, we're really cracking down on voter security. We don't want non-citizens voting. I think the point is only to reassure the voters that you are doing something to make the voting process more secure. It's absolutely redundant to what's already there in federal law and in our state constitution.
The question, I guess, is, are legal green card immigrants, primarily ag and service workers, the one this bill is targeting?
I think the fear is not really about green card long-term residents. I think the thing they're trying to fight against would be someone who's here illegally voting. But in screening so that voting only belongs to citizens, you do lock out of the process those long-term residents who've been paying taxes, living in our communities as legal immigrants. They're excluded from voting.
Dr. Witt mentioned HOA elections. That's an example of not knowing how far this measure might reach, because it does say any election. Those might be considered private clubs, though, unlike school boards or library districts. But the resolution, again, does say any election held within the state of Idaho. You also might be asking, what about that executive order that Governor Little signed with Secretary of State Phil McGrain this last summer? Well, that could change if a new governor comes in. So adding this to the Constitution or amending the Constitution would kind of make this more permanent. A yes vote on HJR 5 would approve adding that line to the Constitution. A no vote would keep it the way it is now.